Welcome back to the Homes on Homes podcast. I'm Mike Holmes. I started this podcast to keep educating people on how to make it right, just like I've been doing for over 20 years on television. Here, you'll find raw, unscripted conversations with experts on building healthy homes, choosing quality products, safety at home, and more. Let's get started. Welcome to another episode of the Homes on Homes podcast. I have my daughter Sherry with me and Ronny Wiskin. He is an accessibility specialist. Med Plus stands for Medical Equipment Distribution. And plus.
Very good. Yes, absolutely.
Now,
plus home healthcare, plus accessibility.
Plus all the things you need.
Yeah. It's kind of a...
I want to talk about you for a second because I first met you probably 2 years ago, maybe more.
See, that's about right. Although I've worked with your team for many years in little ways along the way.
See, that I didn't know that.
Yeah.
But Ronny was on the show with us, helping a wonderful family. It was a great start, and I think we how did you get into this?
Wow. So initially I got into home modification, not really accessibility. It was about modifying my grandmother's house to meet her changing needs. She moved into a retirement living community, and they had bathtubs that were 22 inches high. Imagine that. Newly built.
Wow.
And she wasn't bathing. She was afraid that if she would get into that bathtub,
She'd slip.
she'd slip and fall, and was terrified.
Let's be honest about that. A lot of people do. I mean, I had a friend of mine, her brother was in the shower, slipped, fell, hit his head on the corner, and died
Yes.
Jeez.
in the bathtub.
Very, very serious accidents happen in the bathroom as well as stairs. Those are the two major areas where people have falls. And a very large percentage of hospital admissions for, I don't like ageism, right? But I'm just going to throw a number out there because it's a stat that's followed. But over the age of 65, it's one of the leading causes of hospital admission are falls.
Yeah.
So fall prevention is really key. And I think we might be talking a little bit about that at some point during this podcast.
Let's bring it in the direction that makes sense. First of all, I'm seeing a lot more needs for accessibility in a home, and maybe it's just because the city's getting bigger. There's more and more people. I mean, now you've been on the show how many times now, helping with a family. One recently that I love is that a family. Their son is in a wheelchair. 11 years old, Ben, wonderful. Wait till you see the show.
This is the current show that
This
we're
is the
working on, and
current.
you're still working with us on this show.
But about this is because mom and dad, who end up having a child born cerebral palsy, I believe.
yeah, he was born at 26 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah.
26 weeks. Holy cow.
So he's lucky. He's lucky.
I didn't know
to
that.
to even be with us.
Yeah.
But the point
Very
of
smart boy.
this-
Very smart, very independent, very
Yeah.
functional.
Yes, he is.
Well, I'm hearing that, and I can't wait to meet him because I'm going to be meeting him soon.
Yeah.
But the whole point of my subject here is that mom and dad over the years have had to carry him, take him around, and then they started looking for a house that would be, in their mind, their forever home for the family. And then when Ben grows up, that he can still stay there. So that idea really resonated with me. It was like, that's exactly what we should be doing. We should be buying houses that you can born and die in. And I've said this for years. But they took their time. I think it took them almost 2 years to find the perfect home.
I think it was more than that.
It took a
They
while.
took years to search for the right home, but I think a lot of the time is people buy a house based off of eyesight or feeling as soon as they see it. We need to buy something, we need to buy it now. And you don't always consider, if you do have to do renovations for any accessibility, this house isn't always set up appropriately for that. Versus the house we're doing right now, they actually spent so much time searching for the right house that it was almost made for their needs.
They might have not, they may not have even seen right, some of the features that were in that home that made it, a great home to modify. Like, I don't want to give too much away.
Yeah.
But redoing the design in certain areas to put in elements that need to be there for accessibility.
My point is, we don't see this too often. So this family, since he was born, they knew there was a problem. He's getting bigger now. They knew they had to find the perfect home. They knew they were going to renovate it for Ben, for the family, for them also, right? Because
Yes.
you can't just think of the one child. They have another child.
Well, yeah, it's a whole family living there.
Yeah.
And
It's-
friends coming to visit.
But they found
Yeah.
the perfect home for us to go in and renovate it. And I have to say, I even said to them afterwards when I brought them through on we call it the shock and awe, where I'm showing them it's all open up. We changed the structure. Here's what we had to do. And here's what we're going to do without telling them too much on the finish.
Right.
And at the end of that, after we finished filming, I said to them, I said, you bought the perfect home. Like, I've never put in a 5-foot by 5-foot elevator. That's a nice size elevator.
Right.
And the way they thought about this, it's like he took a measuring tape and he did his homework. But we normally don't see that. Let's get into reality.
Yeah.
That a lot of the families, one of them, okay, and this is another one we did not too long ago. She goes in to do a small operation and wakes up without a leg.
We're talking about Linda.
Yes.
Oh, yes. Much different case there.
So-
oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's a very unexpected occurrence.
Right.
But that's the norm. Something happens throughout life that causes a drastic change to where you're living.
Right.
And in this case, for Linda, she unfortunately did lose her leg in the hospital, and it was because she had an infection, and before you knew it, she didn't even know it, she woke up without the leg.
Right.
And immediately had to adapt. So we went in, now that the house they're living in, we've got to figure out how she can get in and out of the house, be independent like she always was,
Right.
Readapt the bathrooms, the kitchen, like we had to do so much work. So between just those two shows, my subject is whenever anyone is buying a house, they should be looking at, am I going to live here forever? And if I am, what am I going to need? What are the possibilities of a future issue within the family that someone could get hurt, a car accident, and make changes in life? Minimum code today on any single home is your exterior door is 36 inches. Old houses would be 30, 32, which is ridiculous.
That's probably a thought for that is bringing in large items like refrigerators.
Even when you're
and-
moving.
It was all about a refrigerator and washer and dryer.
Right.
But you
Not
think
so
about
much
the convenience of
the
moving, you
wheelchair.
still need a larger door. So why are we still putting in small front doors?
Good question.
Okay, in the United States, one thing I love that the U.S. does is they usually have 40-inch doors up to 48-inch doors. They have big doors.
Right.
So
But they're also, their codes and accessibility are set a little different than we have in Canada, right?
I'll give you a code. Let's see if you can understand the
Yeah.
difference in the United States and Canada.
Yeah.
Doors swing out. Front doors swing out. Not in. Not all of them, but in some places. Why would a door swing out and not in?
Because you can't break in as easily? I don't know. Why would it swing out?
That's a really good question.
Why?
Let's talk about Florida. Doors swing out. Why?
Alligators.
That's a good guess. I kind of want to say hurricanes, but
Bingo.
Oh, dang it.
High
I win the
winds.
prize.
Oh, you
High
did win.
winds. They make the door swing out because it comes into the jam like this, and it will withstand higher winds. If the door swings in, like in Canada, and you'll have high winds, it
Yeah.
could just take the deadbolt right out.
see, this is why I've always watched your show. I learned something every time.
Apparently, I have to start watching it because I had no idea.
Well, I mean, come on.
You didn't know that, did you?
I didn't know that, no. But
Well-
it makes a lot of sense now that you're mentioning
Now,
it. but-
can we do that in Canada? Can we do it in Ontario? Can we put in a door that swings out?
But isn't that more of an issue because of our weather?
You have to recognize minimum code in the building inspection department. They base everything on minimum code. You would have to ask if you can do that in your municipality area. You would have to ask them if you can do that. Does it make sense for storms? The answer is yes. So, I mean, we're going to go further into this.
Right.
And in how we're building homes and what we're missing and what we're not doing and the changes that are necessary building new houses.
For sure.
But all these other old houses, whether it's 10 years old, whether it's 100 years old, it doesn't really matter. Let's start that subject. Older houses.
Yeah.
Anyone that is buying a house today, I say they should be looking for a house that has capabilities of change, not just It's funny because Anna, my sweetheart, she's like, "Oh, I love to look at that house." I don't know how many times I've walked into a house, and we're going to buy another house for an investment, rent it out. I've walked into the house. Within 15 minutes, I'm like, there's no way in hell I'm going to buy this house. The electrical's wrong, structure's wrong, people have played with it. And this is the stigma that I'm now with. So I know within 15 minutes, this is going to be 200 grand to fix this house, just to fix it.
Yeah.
So I don't buy the house. But somebody else buys the house, doesn't really know what I know. That house will stay on the market for 10 to 20 years, or sorry, they'll live in it for 10 to 20 years, and then go to sell the house and they'll make more money, which blows me away. I said no to that house because I know what it's going to take to fix it.
A lot of people wouldn't see that though, and I think that's the difference there. Since we're talking about purchasing a home, I was thinking about Shyla and Bree. That story that we did, and we had you come out and help us there. Now they bought a home, an older home, and they were like, you know what, this is perfect. This is going to be our family home. We're going to modify this for all of Bree's needs. However,
Which was fantastic.
they found out that is not always the right layout, and you have to actually put some thought into that when you're shopping for a house. Right. So they wanted to do a ramp into their front door.
I think for them, the thing they saw right off the bat was that it was a bungalow.
Yeah.
And to them, everybody has the thought that a bungalow is the best purchase of a home when you have a disability, and that's because of the stairs, right?
The answer is 100%.
However,
correct.
you still have to be able to get into a home.
Getting
and if you
in,
don't take that into account, you're going to run into these issues, which they did. They thought they could put a ramp in their front yard, and you said no.
I don't like saying no,
But
you have
I'm not
to.
saying you said no, I cannot do this,
Yeah.
and you gave them obviously another option. But can you explain what you need to look for if we wanted to put a ramp into our front door? What do I need, or what do the viewers need in order to accommodate that?
Very good question. So when you're looking at a home, you're going to take a look at the entrance that you're most commonly using, right? Closest to the driveway or garage typically is the entrance people will use for unloading groceries and whatnot.
The front door.
Front door. Okay, so front door, you're going to look at the stairs and see how many steps there are leading up to that landing. Now above that landing, there's usually another step to get into the door. So really what the task is to make it accessible from where that door threshold lands at the top right down to grade. And that measurement is going to dictate the length of ramp that you need to have.
So simple. Code states for a ramp, for every 1 inch in height, it's 12 inches in run.
Correct, and that's minimum code, right?
Minimum.
Minimum code, right? The accessibility standards that have been set out in the AODA, which is another topic, but a lot of people have heard about it. The built environment standards call for 1 in 20 slope.
Oh, wow.
Very gradual.
Which is easier because you have to think, even at a 1 to 12 inch, in other words, 1 inch, you need 12 inches for that to go up another inch to another inch, so it's a gradual slope. And that's, again, minimum code. But you have to think of someone that's possibly older, a little more fragile, trying to
You need that arm strength
maneuver
to get
in
your
a
chair up.
wheelchair.
Mobility is key in making that determination, right? Because if a person is using a wheelchair and it's manual, self-propelled, they're pushing it themselves, and they have a lot of strength, they're a Paralympic athlete, 1 in 12, no problem. 1 in 9, piece of cake. 1 in 6, they'll handle it. But when you don't have the upper body strength to push the wheelchair and you're not using a powered wheelchair, then you need to have a very gradual slope in order to push that wheelchair.
Yeah, but even if people are, like you said, 1 in 9, I can do it because I'm healthy. The code is 1 to 12.
But does it change when it comes to a motorized wheelchair? Is there a different code? Because if 1 to 12 is a manual
That's
wheelchair.
a great question.
So here's the thing. With ramp construction, building codes, they kick in, right? Because you're dealing with footings, you're dealing with structure, you're dealing with tying into the building, right? It's a permanent feature of the home. So that you're going to have to get a deck permit for, usually running off of a deck or some sort of a platform, and it's going to have to meet that minimum 1 in 12 slope ratio. Now, what they don't factor in is the slope of the landscape, right? So a lot of times, even that 1 in 12 slope ratio, you can throw it out the window.
What Ronnie is saying that for a lot of houses, we want that 5-degree minimum slope away from the home to control water away from the home. And most houses that you would look at or move into, and I'm sure if you looked at your own property, you'd realize you walk out the front door, you walk down the driveway, and it runs down to the outside sidewalk. That could be an easy foot to 2 feet and even higher, which adds to the ratio of the 1 to 12, which dictates the length of the ramp. A lot of people will come and return it, come back up again, return it, come back up again. But in most cases, a smaller plot or a smaller property cannot do this
Accommodate
on the
that.
front of the
You've
house.
got to have the real estate to accommodate the length of ramp that you need.
Okay.
Yeah.
There is many things that we can do to accommodate it. I love the new ramp system you guys have. It's based on the theory of docks.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So you can level up as a platform. You don't need permits for it. It's not permanent. You can be taken out if you ever sold the house to move out. You control the ramp system on how it works on these, which I absolutely love. Also, you can create a platform and then put in a wheelchair lift on that. And again, it's not permanent. It can be moved.
Correct.
So there is ways for a lot of people out there that can have choices to what they're doing. But for a moment, I want to go back to how do we buy the right house for a family? Should we just buy for the neighborhood and because across the street is the school or within a block is the school that our kids are safe enough to walk to? And we don't really pay attention to the 2-level home, the bungalow, the very thin home. We don't really pay attention to the inside and how it's going to serve the family.
So it's an interesting question, because I've been to many homes over the years. I've been working in this field for, I think, 23 years now. And I've actually never had to say to a person that you have to move out of the home that you're currently living, which is pretty amazing.
So you can make it work. It's just to what degree and cost and
this is where the construction specialists come in, because structurally what it's going to take to make these changes that are necessary.
Some could be 300,000 plus, some could be 100,000.
Exactly.
And that's, but I just for a moment, I think my direction is that I don't believe we buy houses with intention of the future.
Right.
I believe we buy houses through impulse.
well, I think you
Absolutely
fall
agree.
in love a lot of the time from
I
what
love
you
the
see
neighborhood.
or
I love the look of the front
Which
of the house.
I do think that's normal. You
Yeah.
want to love where you live and the location and the schools for your kids. So you are taking some things into consideration, but there's maybe a few things that we should also be thinking about before we purchase.
Point, we should be looking at the house not just as, it's different. If there's homeowners out there that are just buying the house, we're going to buy here, we're going to live here for 5 years, we're going to sell it, then we're going to move to Mexico, then I don't care where you move.
Right.
But their concept is we're going to be here for 5 years. That's a different story. Hope to hell that family never has a change within no harm, nobody gets hurt, nobody needs some type of accessibility. No. But I'd like to get to people. I'd like to get to you right now. Just tell you, don't just buy a house on impulse.
Right.
Buy it with a science mind.
Right. So take it from a home inspection lens view, right? So you're inspecting a home for deficiencies, for things that you don't necessarily know about. You're kind of going in blind. You don't know if there's mold. You don't know if there's structural damage. So a home inspector goes in and tells you what you have to fix before you purchase. There really is not a service out there that's dedicated to identifying what accessibility barriers are in the home.
There's home inspectors.
There are home inspectors, but not really accessibility home inspectors that are part of that initial purchase thought process.
Let's dumb this down just for a second.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
Based on what you've both said, what would you recommend to homeowners based off their needs? Let's say they need wheelchair access into their home. What would you recommend to a homeowner to maybe keep in mind
Now,
when
your
purchasing?
question is based on whether
if
they
they
have
have,
someone
yeah,
in the home
I'm just
that
curious. What would be
needs accessibility?
Yes, someone needs this accessibility. What would be something you would tell a homeowner if you're looking to purchase? Maybe look for a home like this that we could work with.
Okay, this is a very fair question, and I mean, I don't like telling people what type of home to
Yeah,
buy
it's super
because it's a
vague.
very personal thing and there's a lot of factors. You know, interior layout, features, this and that. But, you know, where it's going to cost people the most money to retrofit the home is at the entrance, the bathroom, the kitchen potentially. And it really
Doorways.
doorways.
Do you
yeah,
need an elevator?
Flooring. There's all kinds of things, right? Changes in level. Some homes have sunken living rooms, so now that 1 or 2 steps down to that separate area of the home becomes, you know, inaccessible for some people. So if your levels are all nice and there's no changes in level on the interior and the exterior entrance is nice and low and the grading isn't super steep, you know, maybe I know water, you want to build homes and make the landscaping so you bring the water away from the home, but I think a 2% slope is necessary,
Minimum.
right?
Minimum.
Okay.
Okay,
We
those
don't
are
want flat land. We don't need flat
those
land.
are some good features to maybe keep an eye out for. I think
Yeah.
it's important that there is some takeaway here. Do you remember Noah?
Yes.
So, because you mentioned your flooring, we did work for a little boy, Noah, and he was a very active
I remember
young boy.
meeting Noah.
Yeah,
He was flying around in his wheelchair.
Yes, and
Yeah.
so
4
they
years
had the
old, I
problem.
think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they had the problem of their flooring and their baseboard, the durability of everything, because he would run his wheelchair into the wall. He was an excited little kid.
Yeah.
So they needed something that stood the test of time. What do you think maybe is the best flooring
Best
to
flooring?
stand up for durability?
Very good question. So laminate flooring is certainly acceptable, but you want to make sure that the thickness of that laminate, you know, exceeds 12 mil, right?
Okay.
Because the thicker that material is, the less movement there's going to be. And when the wheelchair is turning, especially power
Yeah.
chairs, there's a lot of force, right?
Like a tire of the car.
Yeah. So you want to make sure that the flooring is nice and locked in and thick enough in order to handle that pull, that shearing that's happening.
I got a question for you. And again, this isn't finishing flooring, you know, vinyl flooring. We know this is the best. We do it
Vinyl's
all the
great.
time in the basement
I love
with
vinyl.
cork, soundproofing.
Yeah.
But
Vinyl's come a
vinyl's
long
technically
way.
a little bit thinner. Do you still think there's a bit of an issue
Well, no,
with
you
that
can-
with
you
your
can-
tire?
You can get thick vinyl.
Oh,
Okay.
you can get 3/8 vinyl.
Yeah.
Vinyl's come a long way. But before we go into finishing,
Yeah.
because I don't want to jump ahead on this. I really want to segue this into the direction of, and I think this is going to take longer.
There's a lot of
This may
aspects.
be 2 parts there.
Yeah.
But I want to segue this into what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong, and unexpected things. So my question to you is, are you seeing most families now that need wheelchair accessibility has been since the children were born? Let's talk about old age. Let's talk about the possibilities here.
So my world is a little bit different than most in the construction industry because what I'm seeing are people that have had a change in life, right? There's been an event that brings them back home from the hospital and rehabilitation. Sometimes our clients are in rehabilitation for a few weeks, sometimes for several months, putting the pieces back together, getting them to the point where they can move back home. So they're coming with an injury back to the house and changes need to be made.
I had a feeling.
Yeah.
You're telling me you're seeing more surprises now that people didn't expect, more than, you know, when it comes to Ben, who was born at 26 weeks and ended up having to be in a wheelchair.
Right.
I can't wait to see the end of the show. But you're seeing more surprise changes in life, yes?
Oh, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that brings me right to my point that all these years in construction, I have said to everyone, when it comes to minimum code, why are not all doors 36 inches? Why are we not planning to build as a minimum code
I agree.
Yeah.
all doors to be 36 inches just in case?
Very good.
And I'll tell you why.
What does it cost? $2 more for that bigger door?
But when you build 1,000 houses at $2 for every single
adds up
door,
pretty quickly.
that's a crap load of money that the
True.
builder is going to spend,
Yeah.
who doesn't have to because he's operating on minimum code points.
Right. This is subdivision, track building.
Do you know how many people said to me over the years, you know, Mike, you got to help change code, and it's like, oh boy, you know, I'm doing my best to inform people, But it's not about changing minimum code. It's about the perception of what people are buying. In order to change code, first of all, most codes change due to disasters. Sump pump in the basement, I love it. That's a sump pump pipe comes out 12 inches off grade, 8 inches outside the wall. That is code, right?
Yep.
And the reason we did that is because the drains were backflowing into the basement due to the downspouts going into the weeping tile, being picked up and put into the drains, right?
Saw a lot of that a few weeks ago.
Right.
Yes.
And we've seen this in the last
Yeah.
many years. Pull those out. Now you got to put in a sump pump. Everything goes to the sump pump and it pumps it outside, brings it right down the outside of the house, back to the weeping tile, right into the sump pump, and creates a continuous flow, which I find ridiculous. That's many codes out there that due to floods, due to fires, due to danger, codes will change to a minimum code that protects the house and the family more than anything.
That makes sense. Yeah.
That's how code changes. But what we need to do is have the people, the buyers, enforce and tell the builders, I want all the doors 36 inches. You know, stop looking at the floor. Stop looking at the cabinets. Think of the future, because I know you're right. I know that people out there are coming home with surprises. Broke my leg, got a new hip. All of a sudden, you don't realize you can't get into the house until you get out of the car and go, how am I going to get in the house?
And this affects all ages through all stages of life.
Right.
We don't know when that is going to happen.
So this brings me back from when I first started this television show, and I've been a contractor since I was a young kid. We need to buy with things in mind. Bungalows were the #1 house. I'm going to ask you a question, Sherry.
Oh gosh.
Years ago, bungalows were everywhere. Why did we change to 2-story homes almost
Why?
everywhere?
I'm not sure why. I mean, maybe because our family needs are increasing and it's more of a multi-generational home now. So more people are living in the house, you need more space. I don't think people really considered that bungalows are the most efficient of housing you can have.
Heating,
Yeah.
getting in and out, changes, most efficient home on the planet.
And I will say, as a homeowner, I do like having a second floor, even though I'm aware of all these things. So it does, there's different cases where it makes sense, and my house is laid out, so should I age in place, I have an option. And right now I'm good with stairs, and my family is, so I have the extra room. And you know, sometimes you have unexpected guests. You put things upstairs, they're not going there. It's
Right.
good. But to answer your question, I don't know why it became more popular. I would assume because we had more needs to be met. But.
So the average footprint for a property, let's say 50 years ago, was 60 feet by 120 feet, okay? Properties today are 25 to 30 feet wide to 80 feet long. Why?
I don't know.
Because everyone's trying to build the population, to build the economy in the city. And like, Toronto, just go for Toronto for a second. You know, when I was a kid, I watched the CN Tower being built. You know, I seen the
What?
helicopters come in. Yeah. It was-
I remember
I
that,
lived
yeah.
not far from there.
When was the
I
CN
actually
Tower
I worked
built?
with a guy that was on that project.
Really?
So cool,
well,
yeah.
what year was it built?
Approximately 50 years ago.
Okay, hang on.
You
I
could
gotta-
go ahead and check it, and I'll continue this.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you're bringing in more population, and the government's trying to build the area,
Wow.
they enforced, and the builders had the idea on this. We're gonna
1973.
yeah, there you go. I was 10.
Wow.
It was 41 years ago. That's a long time ago for me.
I was not alive.
You were not alive.
was not
you were
alive.
not even a thought.
Wow. Me, I wasn't even born back
Builders came up with the idea that we can build more houses. We'll make it a smaller footprint on the first floor and give them a second floor.
then. Yeah.
So it was I call this the ant colony.
Oh my goodness, I didn't even think about that.
That is to
now I
put
feel like
more
it's silly.
people in an area
Yeah.
that the government can tax. I'm telling you, this is what's happened. Even when we tried to do Calgary, the government wanted us to double the houses on the property where I'm trying to build this as the greenest freaking community in the country.
Yeah.
That's another story I don't even want to talk
Oh,
about,
yeah.
and I'll never do it again. You know, I learn as I go. So we're jamming. We're creating an ant colony. And then we just started condos. I remember when I was a kid,
Yeah.
condos. Who's going to live in condos?
They're everywhere now.
I mean, I've lived in condos. The thing is, it's also the housing market we have to think about, because not everything is as affordable. And what you're saying totally makes sense, but we do need options that are a little bit more on the affordable range, which is where a condominium comes in.
So let's get back to the
Okay.
focus. Buying a house.
Real estate. So you're dealing with a real estate agent. A lot of real estate agents nowadays, they have this, education and designation for aging in place specialists. They're certified real estate agents that go through a program to identify what types of features in the home will suit accessibility for, long-term housing needs, which is great. So the professionals that you're working with, first of all, work with people that can help you identify these things, because I could go through a list, but that list is going to be extremely long, because we're talking about homes that have different layouts, we're talking about homes that have different features, we're talking about people that have different needs. So accessibility, right, it is a little bit different than universal design and aging in place, right? So if you want to buy a home that's universally designed, that can be used for people of all abilities, all age groups, that home, you're not going to be buying used. You're most likely going to be building it brand new. So new home construction, I think, is definitely over the past few years made some improvements, like, stacked closets with demountable floors.
We are finally starting to think of the future. Stacked closets means in the future you can easily put in an elevator.
Right. And you don't have to make all kinds of structural modifications if you just remove the plywood sheathing off the floor and you remove the drywall, and now you've got some bolts that you need to unscrew.
Yeah, but don't you find this very short time period that we were thinking this way, and all of a sudden that's gone out the window? Because I don't think they're doing that anymore.
No. The Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act, which started, I think, around 2005, it was set, actually the year we're in now, 2025, Ontario was supposed to be an accessible province, fully accessible.
Oh,
right?
wow.
Now, what's interesting about that goal is that the majority of the properties in our province are old. They're there. Mm-hmm. They've been built, pre-building code changes that happened in the 80s, which had some accessibility built in. So making a province accessible that has so many properties that are residential that you can't force people to change, right? It's going to come down to what an individual wants to change when they purchase that home, if anything, right? So buying a new home is a little bit different, because when you're building that home that's going to last for a couple hundred years.
Yeah, but even then people make mistakes, because, how many people are building their dream home, whether it's huge, whether it's small, and they trip and fall, because even though they can educate themselves, there's lots of education out there on what they really should be doing for when they get older.
Yeah.
That's no different than someone aging in place, which we'll get into later.
Yeah.
But there is we're still not, we don't have builders out there going, can I give you some advice?
Instead of thinking about your finishes.
Yeah, let me give you some advice. You're about to build a brand new home. And can I tell you that all the doors should be, first of all, floors seamless, right? Just so no tripping hazards, safety.
Right.
Oh, yeah. And if you get in a wheelchair, one day by accident, maybe you broke a leg. Just simple advice along the way. Every door should be 36 inches. The door should be, it should be rooming enough. I mean, code for a wheelchair is a 5'5" turning radius, right?
Right.
5 feet by 5 is a turning radius in a wheelchair.
But that's actually not really designed for a wheelchair. That turning
That's a
radius,
minimum.
Yeah. But the turning radius, the whole 5x5 turning radius, was designed to accommodate larger devices like gurneys and scooters.
Oh.
Okay? Turning radius on a wheelchair is much tighter than 5x5.
Well, it's just like a tractor. You can just do this and just turn on a dime.
On a dime.
I would like to see builders really try to help educate homeowners if they're building a new house. But to all the people out there that are looking to buy a property, I think I'm trying to say, and I think what you're trying to help me say is, we need to look at the possibility of this home. What if something happened? How many houses have we worked on?
A lot.
That it was, geez, 65 steps to get up to the front door
Right.
because they bought up on top of a hill. The street's down here. The stairs are rotting, the rails are rotting.
Beaches, right?
I'm telling you,
Yeah.
I'm telling you, beaches.
Yeah.
But people love it. Oh, well, you should see the view from my front window. You break your leg.
Yeah.
How you getting up there?
You're not, is the answer.
Right. Hill climbers. You're looking at different devices that are
Yeah.
really, I mean, you're not going to think about them without knowing about them. So Niagara Falls, you go there for a holiday and they have that hill climber that brings you from the bottom of the falls right up to the top
No.
deck. No, you
I
haven't
didn't
seen
know
that?
about, okay, no.
Yeah, so
Like a little escalator kind of thing?
yeah, it's kind of like a what do you call
Conveyor
it?
belt?
Like a ski gondola,
Oh, a lift,
but it goes
okay.
up rails,
Okay.
right? And it climbs that hill, and
So you don't have to.
you have them for wheelchairs, okay? Incline platform lifts and
Oh.
hill climbers. These are things that are possible.
And very expensive.
Yeah, it's
very expensive, very intrusive.
Right.
If you're buying for the neighborhood, you need to install something like that to get to your front door.
Well, imagine you have a heritage home
Mm-hmm.
where you're not allowed to change it, and you need to have these changes made.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of people out there that love a heritage home.
They're charming.
I don't.
They're charming.
I don't.
I'm sure you've torn apart.
But I'm
have.
the
few of them.
contractor
We have.
that people hire to redo that house that I'm forced to stick to the look.
Yeah.
I remember years ago we had to battle the inspectors to go, okay, these windows look the same, but we're taking out the single pane glass and putting in double pane.
Right.
And they fought us on it. They fought us. Why? It's not because they wanted to. It's because that was heritage code. You couldn't change it. Nowadays, they're letting it go because it doesn't make sense to put in a single pane glass when you can make the window look the same,
Right.
but bring it to more energy efficient because we're trying to save the
Isn't the whole
environment.
idea of preservation for
Right, right.
a heritage home?
You'd think.
Yeah.
And a little bit of environmental.
Right.
So things like that work, but trying to redo a heritage home is so costly. It's not something I recommend.
Right.
So clearly, there is so much that we can talk about, and I'm trying to simplify this as to people buying houses at this point. We know we need to look for bigger doors. Well, odds are they're not going to get it. Odds are they're not going to get it.
Right.
But I'm trying to encourage, can we make those changes based on what you're looking at? On top of, I'm buying on impulse, right? Look for the things that I may need as I'm getting older or something that could happen. When people are looking to buy a house for accessibility, that's a different story. And they hire contractors. Contractors out there, do they all know how to do accessibility?
I mean, they have
Within reason.
rules to follow.
Yeah.
But do they know when and where to look?
Should a homeowner just call a contractor and go, okay, I need a ramp in the front of my house, I need these doors changed? In most cases, most contractors can handle all of this because they're gonna have to get a permit for the ramp if it's permanent.
If it's permanent, yes.
Only, or if there's a deck that is attached to the house, that's when you need a permit.
Right.
So finding out all these things, again, comes back to education. And we need to learn all these things first or educate ourselves first.
Yeah.
But I think what I'm trying to say here is for most homeowners out there, talking to someone like you as a specialist in this field would be wise to do before if they want to learn something.
Well, yes, it's similar to a home inspector, right? So the home inspector is going to check the home out for any deficiencies in structure and many other things, whereas an accessibility specialist is going to look at the home from a different lens. What changes need to be made in order to accommodate, well, first of all, needs that are right there today, but future needs that nobody knows about.
So anyone can call you for advice on a house that they just bought or are thinking of buying, like a home inspector, and you'll go.
Yeah, I do actually get calls from real estate agents
Oh.
frequently.
That's really good.
Telling me that they're accommodating a client who has a disability and they want to make sure the home they're buying is the right home.
That's great.
So,
And a lot of the time, what you were saying, you want to make sure that the contractor is going to communicate with someone like yourself in order to have those renovations done properly or modifications done. Do you go in with a contractor a lot?
contractors, absolutely, because we have to walk through the project, set the expectations, give an understanding of why these changes are being made, And from that point forward, the contractor has the knowledge themselves to run with it.
Once again,
know?
this just keeps going back to my very first television show.
Yeah.
Finding the right contractor, finding the right home, finding the right person in your field, just in case you need someone for accessibility, are things that we need to do ahead of time for education.
Right.
Instead of just jump. Stop jumping. Like, stop jumping. I always say, don't run, walk.
Right.
Let's walk. Walking is as good as an exercise as running. It is. Let's
Walk
walk.
is a great exercise.
Let's walk there. Let's figure out how to get there.
Let's first learn how to walk before we're going to run, right?
It's true.
The thing about purchasing a home is that it's so personal, and you don't want to say no to somebody because the doorway is not wide enough, or the entrance is too high, or they have multiple levels of stairs, it's a back split, because that might be the perfect home in every other aspect. However, accessibility is what's lacking. So you want to be able to identify what changes need to be made in that home and put a dollar value to it. Same like a home inspector does and says, okay, you've got all these structural issues, it's going to cost you X amount of dollars to fix. Well, now you know in your negotiation for the purchase and your financing how much money you need to have in order to make that home that you want as your dream home come to life and work for you. Accessibility has to be done in the same way if you're planning for the future, especially.
Well, I think we need to start learning to plan for the future. Let's talk about insurance for a moment.
Yeah.
Are we insured enough when it comes to, oh, I broke my leg, or, like, I didn't just break my leg. One of my friends flew to Mexico, got on one of those floating islands that was, what do you call it?
A boat?
No.
Floating up?
No. It's, you got to run track.
You're talking
It's
about this, the
floating dock.
jumpy thing.
Yeah, it's not
they're
just-
they're in the water and you go up and you're climbing around, you go down slides and stuff.
Yeah, it's an
Whatever that is.
exercise. You got to run and jump over hills, and you got to climb the
Like
ropes.
an obstacle
It's
course
like a
on water.
cottage
It's an
toy, right?
obstacle
Yeah.
Like an
course.
island.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So he gets, and he's younger than me. He's in really good shape.
Yeah.
And they may have had a couple of drinks, not drunk, but he's running through this obstacle course, and he goes up over the wall, and when he gets up over the wall, because of the way it was tied down at the bottom, his foot got caught into the bottom, and his body went forward. And when that happened, it totally turned his foot backwards, snapped his ankle so bad, even from his knee down.
In
he
more
was-
than one place.
He was out for a year, man. He had
Yeah,
he had to have a
surgery.
pin right from his knee to his ankle, all kinds of screws, all kinds of bolts. Every time he goes to the airport now, he's got to bring a picture
Yeah.
and information that he's got this crap in his leg and is going to have it for life. For a year, he was out. What kind of insurance do we need to cover this? Now, we know that's a whole different story here. It's a whole different podcast.
I can talk about what I know about, right? So, insurance for vehicles, for automobile injuries, there is coverage for rehabilitation, okay? So I tell people, and I don't want to sound like I'm, making fun or joking, but if you're going to get into a situation where you end up with a disability, the best way to do it, and I'm not promoting going out and getting in car accidents,
No.
but if you do get in a car accident and you are seriously injured, the $1 million liability policy that you have, that goes towards rehabilitation, okay?
Yeah, not just bingo. I made $1 million, even though I can't walk for 10 years.
No, it has to be
Right.
allocated in the right direction.
But it should be.
Right, I'm not a legal expert, but if there's, there's damages, right? So damages from that accident involve damage to the vehicle, damage to the person, and damage to the property that they live in, okay? Damage to the property they live in, that's a tough one because it wasn't involved in the accident. But the person who's living there, the home is looked at a place where they're going to rehabilitate, okay, and live. So the home, they have entitlements to have the home adapted to meet their needs that have changed.
That's part of it, possible and part of insurance?
You have $1 million right there as your rehabilitation budget, and if it's going to cost $1 million to renovate the home to accommodate you, then the insurance company will pay that money. So this industry for insurance rehabilitation involves specialists like occupational therapists, which is a whole other topic, but a very important one. Physiotherapists and construction specialists that understand accessibility, like myself, very small few of people that do what I do in Ontario and around the world.
Is this only for car accidents?
Motor vehicle accidents. So it could be a motorcycle.
Nothing else, really.
Nothing.
So really, we're not covered unless we get into a car accident.
You fall at home, you don't really have the same coverage. It's a different type of claim, right? Like if you have an injury at somebody's home,
That's different.
Yeah.
you're suing them, right? You don't have access to set amount of funds. There's, statutory accident benefits schedule, which covers what's paid out in an insurance related injury. So for injuries and property, it's not really the same way. You kind of have to go about it with a personal injury lawyer and submit all these different expenses that you're running into and try to recover that from the homeowner policy. Motor vehicles actually, because so many people get injured in motor vehicle accidents.
Is there anything that you can do to teach me that if something happened to me, how I could be, am I covered in insurance? Can I use any type of insurance other than me being insured, which I know to pay in case I get hurt on the job site, hurt somewhere, and it covers my mortgage for a year. And, possibly if I lose a hand, it gives $20,000. Like, is there anything else?
So you get hurt, your primary, thought process right away is, how long am I going to be in here? In the hospital, how long am I going to be rehabilitating? What happens in the background usually for people who have been seriously injured is they're working with a lawyer, right? Personal injury lawyer, and that person is going to be able to guide you through what all these next steps are. So it's not something you have to worry too much about or think about, because there are professionals that are already waiting there for you.
So you find the right person to talk to and help walk you through the process.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're in a car accident, I'm not saying call a person who does accessibility
Talk to a
construction.
lawyer.
No,
You got to talk to a lawyer.
talk to a lawyer, right?
But again, in life, these are the surprises that people don't expect.
Yeah.
They never expect. They think everything's going to be fine. I'm going to get up and going to work. When I come home, honey, what you making for dinner? We don't think of any possible accidents from the time you get out of bed to the time you come home.
Right.
That will change your life in a flash.
Right. Let's use stroke as an example, because that's one that a lot of people can relate to. So a stroke survivor, a lot of times will have
Paralysis in one half
they'll
of
be
their body,
paralyzed on half of their body, and
In
now,
a wheelchair, can't
right?
usually talk properly. It's going to take a while to get back to talking.
Yeah, there's all these different things that happen to the body, and it's in many cases permanent.
That alone tells me again, it goes right back to the beginning. Did we buy the right house? Were we prepared for anything? And I'm not trying to scare anyone that we need to be prepared. We just always need to think ahead.
Yeah.
No different than I know the weather's changing and I got to build for all the rain that's coming. I got to build for the high winds, a better roof, a better structure, because storms are going to be, which is another subject.
Yeah, there's a lot of subjects.
But it's all about thinking ahead when it comes to houses. Now, obviously, we don't have enough time.
We want to
continue
try to get
this.
people. We want to try to modify people, not their homes, right? How's that going to happen?
It's through education. It's
boy.
through subjects, and we do this all the time
That's a
because
dream.
we're helping families.
Yeah.
And I get that. So I didn't even get to where I wanted to talk about, and that's aging in place. So we're going to have to continue this, and we'll do this on another podcast.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here, Sherry. And hey, this is about education. The more we know, the better we are tomorrow. Thank you.
And thank you.
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 If you like the show, check out the episode page on makeitright.ca for more tips. Listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and Amazon Music. Subscribe so you don't miss an episode.